Welcome back to SADGIC The Gathering. I'm your host. Today, I am really excited to share with you an exclusive look at a brand new Universes Beyond set. I don't think anyone has seen this yet. You're going to be the first to see it. Let's take a look. Just kidding. Although, I feel like there are some really good opportunities for some alt art there. Okay, but actually today we are going to talk about Universes Beyond. With all the noise and excitement going on, I want to look at IPs that I think are likely going to happen in the future and IPs that I wish would happen but might not. Universes Beyond is really divisive, but it's also really successful. As far as myself, I find myself in a camp that probably most Magic players find themselves in, which is it depends. Does the IP translate pretty naturally, or does it feel forced? Does Wizards do the IP justice? Do they leave off some things? Do they focus on things we wish they didn't? Does it coexist harmoniously with other Magic sets, or is it kind of its own little weird island? When we look at the IPs that Magic has already used for Universes Beyond, it's a mixed bag, but I think it's mostly positive. I think Wizards of the Coast has consistently done a pretty good job with Universes Beyond, even if philosophically, I don't agree with some of the sets they've chosen. I think mechanically and design-wise, the cards are good. I think Lord of the Rings was pretty much everything I wanted it to be. They did a great job with Fallout, and Warhammer was a huge win. I think all three of those sets really made sense for me. Even Fallout, which initially I was skeptical about, was done very well in a surprisingly amazing way. On the other hand, Doctor Who, Transformers, and Jurassic Park, not really my vibe. I'm sorry, David Tennant. Okay, but with all that being said, here's what we're going to do in this video. First, we're going to look at 5 IPs that I think are very likely to become Universes Beyond sets because of popularity, because of how well they would translate to Magic, and personal bias. For the second half of the video, we're going to pick 5 IPs that I think are popular enough, would adapt really well, and that I personally love, but I just don't see it happening for Universes Beyond. Okay, got it? Good, let's go. First up is Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is undeniably massive, but it also happens to be in growth mode right now. House of Dragons is in full swing. The new Hedge Knight series is coming out soon, and I think they've got like a few video games that are up and coming as well. Additionally, Game of Thrones is no stranger to being adapted into board games or strategy games. I really don't think it would be a big leap into the world of TCGs. I think obviously the strongest case to be made here is that the book series and the TV series are both massively loved. Even though the book series isn't done and the TV series shouldn't have ended that way. The fantasy and geopolitical setting are perfect for Magic, and there's so much source material. This set would obviously be very dragon heavy. Great. I think Monarch and Dethrone would be perfect mechanics to utilize here as well. But the big question on everyone's mind, what would that incest mechanic look like?
Whoa.
Up next, Dune. Dune is hot right now, man. The movies are masterpieces. They got one more coming. The books are iconic, and they've done a really good job at leaning into the hype and the pop culture of it all with Fortnite skins and tempestuous popcorn buckets. And obviously Dune has a massively rich, deep lore world building to pull from that I think designers would just have a field day with. And it's obviously a really good balance between fantasy and science fiction, and I think it would help Magic to further develop that relationship without losing its core of Magic. I think a set like this almost demands to be built in a specific way with deserts and worms and ornithopters. Additionally, I think it would be really cool to see how they would adapt still suits and spice and the voice. Look, you're telling me that we can get Paul Atreides doing the Peter Griffin dance, but we can't get Dune for Magic? Okay, up next, we've got Elder Scrolls. Wizards of the Coast already has the relationship set up with Bethesda from Fallout. And just like I mentioned with all the previous IPs on this list, Elder Scrolls has a massive catalog of game lore, world building Magic system that would be easy to pull from. It's also one of the most popular fantasy video game series of all time, and I actually think Magic fans were shocked that we got Fallout before we got Elder Scrolls. I also think that Elder Scrolls has been sort of memed to death at this point, in a good way.
I used to be an adventurer.
There would be so many fun little winks and nods for the designers to throw in a set like Elder Scrolls. With this being such a classic fantasy setting, I think it's easy to pull cool monsters and weapons and factions and regions and races that would just work perfectly. And while I've only ever played Skyrim, I know that the other games have some pretty amazing storylines to build on, like demonic cults and demigods popping out of volcanoes. And yeah, I want to be able to Fusro Da something back into someone's hand, okay? I'm sorry. Okay, up next we have the Chronicles of Narnia. That's right, James McAvoy, get your hairy back out here. For being one of the pillars of modern fantasy from the 20th century, I don't feel like we talk about Chronicles of Narnia nearly enough, though it's kind of hard when your best buddy releases this at the same time as you. But I think that if Wizards can release a book-accurate set for Lord of the Rings, it can do the same for Chronicles of Narnia. It's quintessential fantasy. It's a household name. And even though there were some pretty decent Disney movies made, I really don't think Chronicles of Narnia has ever fully had its moment that it deserves. Chronicles of Narnia spans a massive period of time, so I think there's a ton of characters and plot lines and settings that would be easy to adapt. And with the new Greta Gerwig movies coming out, I think there's a massive opportunity to have a magic tie-in here. With so many creatures going on in this series, I think you just keep it simple. You go with a ton of creature types, maybe you bring back battles. I think flavor-wise, this scratches an itch similar to sets like Lorwyn or Bloomburrow or even Dominaria a little bit. I think for unique art treatments here, it would be a cool opportunity to do like children's illustrations from the 20th century, sort of giving it that English literature-y feel. Narnia is coming back, I'm telling you. Okay, and lastly on my list of IPs that I think we're likely to see is The Witcher. The Witcher is kind of my wild card on this list because there are some obvious reasons of why I can see it happening, but I can also definitely see it not happening. The main hesitation for me here is Gwent, Witcher's very own, fairly popular trading card game. And while official support did stop in 2023 for the digital version of the game, they have since released a physical version of the game, which means they know it's still popular and people will buy it. But hey, with some incredible video games, a really popular TV show, and a ton of books, it's easy to see why this would work. The lore, the world building, the characters, it's all there. It's a pretty hot commodity with a very vocal fan base, so I would be interested to see if Wizards could pull off getting the rights to it. I think the way that you differentiate The Witcher among other similar fantasy sets within Magic is how The Witcher uniquely uses potions and oils and magic science, whether that's in the form of instants and sorceries or using equipment as food. Could be kind of cool. And you just know those bathtub alt arts are coming in hot. I also think there's a really fun opportunity here to do stuff with curses, humans versus non-humans, or maybe giving The Witcher like a fight mechanic. Okay, for my second list, these are IPs that I think would work so well. They're so popular. I just don't see Wizards willing to pull it off or able to pull it off. Up first is Studio Ghibli. Oh man, this is the dream. This is my little pet set that I know will never happen because the second that you showed any of these designs or this game to Miyazaki, he would say something like, man, I love that guy. I think understandably, Studio Ghibli is really strict about how they license things, whether it's toys or theme parks or whatever. They like to have creative control, which I get. I actually appreciate that about Studio Ghibli. I think it keeps things tight without there being so many cheap iterations or flooded with merchandise. They're really protective of their style and their stuff, and so I can appreciate why they don't want people meddling with it. Additionally, I think the issue that we're going to run into with a lot of IPs on this second list is that it's not one cohesive thing. It's multiple different movies or multiple different things that are not connected. And I think Magic historically really only builds IPs that are giant cohesive things where they can continuously pull and draw and connect all the cards together. Man, I just want a Mononoke deck with wolves and boars and gods. And I want a Nausicaa deck with an army of Ohms. And I want Howl and Calcifer and a vehicle that is the moving castle. And I want No Face that gives treasures to other players, but when you use it, it's just dirt. Oh, I want that set really bad. Up next, we have From Software. Man, this set would be it. It would just rule so hard. I mean, it is all there. Iconic characters, big bosses, cool weapons, poop nights. There's so much lore to pull from with all these games, and there is so much support from fans here. I feel like I've seen the most amount of custom Magic cards made from soft games. Here is the hang up. The From Software games are not all connected to each other. There are 5 major game series that you'd have to pull from, right? Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Elden Ring. Each is as beloved as the last. And while I know fans would go crazy from any From Software sets, I don't see Magic committing to 5 different distinct sets. I don't even see them committing to one and leaving behind the rest. But honestly, I don't think it's unheard of for us to get a From Software Secret Lair, maybe even a From Software Secret Lair Commander deck. That would be pretty cool. I just don't know if I realistically see it happening, but that's one that I would really love to be proven wrong on, because how amazing would it be to see Radon and Melania with a rot mechanic? And Bloodborne is already so similar to Innistrad, I feel like that's just a one-to-one adaptation there. Getting to expend souls like energy counters would be so cool. Okay, let's talk about Legend of Zelda. The Legend of Zelda would be a near perfect Universes Beyond set. It's an insanely popular fantasy series across the world with dozens of games, so many amazing characters, and iconic art styles. It works pretty much on every level for Magic, but I don't think it's going to happen because Nintendo is just a little bit grumpy. Nintendo partially owns Pokemon, and Pokemon is the Magic the Gathering competitor. I get that they're different, but let's add a little fuel to the fire here. Wizards of the Coast distributed Pokemon cards in the 90s and early 2000s. And when Pokemon pulled out of the deal, there was a big lawsuit.
Link, what the heck was that?
Well, excuse.
Not really sure how the relationship stands there. I know that Pokemon is not Nintendo, but I feel like it's pretty hard to separate the two at this point, which means I think there would be a lot of hurdles to overcome, as perfect as Zelda would be. You would just have to have Link, Ganon, and Zelda precons. In the same way that Lord of the Rings did multiple versions of the main characters throughout their journey in Lord of the Rings, I think you can just do that same thing with Legends of Zelda characters, and whether it's Young Link or Toon Link or whatever, you have different versions with different abilities focused on the games that they're from. You could have Ocarina Link, you could have Wind Waker Link, you could have Breath of the Wild Link. And piggybacking off of that, there would be so many opportunities to do serialized and special edition versions of those cards. A little bit of a pipe dream there, but hey, why not? Okay, next up, we've got DC. It goes without saying, but DC has a massive cast of characters and so many different places to go, even outside of the Justice League, like Raven, Swamp Thing, and Constantine. But with Marvel being the main focus for Wizards for the foreseeable future, I just don't think we're going to see any DC cards for a while, if ever. I think it would also be pretty vital for Wizards to find a way to differentiate the Marvel cards from the DC cards, and I could see that being a problem. Mostly, I could just see Marvel getting upset at DC trying to horn in on their action. I also think that the Marvel cards are kind of a bold move for Magic. I know that the Secret Lair sold out super fast, of course it'll be popular, but I'm curious to see the longevity of these Marvel cards, and if fans of Magic buy these cards and play these cards in the long run in a way that tells Wizards more. I guess we'll have to see. If they do DC, I think that they'd have to break it up the way that they've broken up Marvel sets because there's just so much ground to cover. I think if Wizards wanted to maybe try some smaller stuff with DC first, it could be successful, like Suicide Squad, the Green Lantern Corps, or the Teen Titans. But who are we kidding? They are not going to have a hard time selling DC cards if they made them. Okay, and last on this list, we have anime. This one is kind of my wild card because obviously I'm not just going to make a blanket statement saying that Wizards of the Coast will not make anime sets. I think it's likely that they will eventually. There's actually a ton of evidence for why anime would come into Magic the Gathering, with anime art treatments that they've done and with sets that are akin to anime that have been really successful. But I will tell you why anime is a little bit tricky. With so many different amazing anime, that would mean multiple different contracts with multiple different studios managing the rights to multiple IPs. I'm not saying they wouldn't do it, but I'm saying that as soon as they open the floodgates of anime, you couldn't just do one set. You'd have to do like all of them. I mean, I can't even imagine how many different sets of edits and art treatments and things they had to go through before they got to any kind of a final product with Middle-earth Enterprises for the Lord of the Rings set. It would just be a ton of work that they would have to keep doing for the foreseeable future. And I know they did stuff with Cowboy Bebop in A Secret Lair. I'm not sure that it will ever expand beyond that for other anime. I'm not saying that they wouldn't do that, and I'm not saying that they're not willing to do that, but it is a consideration. Another major element to consider is that a lot of these anime already have semi-popular card games attached to them, like this little bastard here. And it's not that these studios wouldn't love to partner with Wizards of the Coast. It's likely that they already have signed contracts with these existing card games that prevents them from going and starting something else. That's just a theory of mine. I'm not 100% sure on that. But man, could you imagine breathing forms as abilities from Demon Slayer, amazing artifacts, and the law of equivalent exchange as an ability from Full Metal Alchemist, being depressed and hating your life from Berserk, domains as enchantments from Jujutsu Kaisen, and ninjutsu galore from Naruto. And we already know that Wizards of the Coast are not one to shy away from fan service. No siree. Okay, that's it, folks. All of my hopes and fears for Universes Beyond. Okay, now here are my 2 questions for you. 1, what is your dream Universes Beyond set? And 2, if we got any sets from the IPs that I mentioned in my list, what would be a mechanic or a flavorful thing or an ability that you would like to see? Please say hi in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. You guys are the best. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel for the latest and greatest from SADGIC the Gathering, and we'll see you soon.